I'll get on the other one, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here. Of course, I want to have a special thanks to Senator Farmer and Tina Polsky, as well as Representatives Kelly Skidmore and Michelle Rayner-Gillespie for introducing these very important bills to be considered upon this upcoming legislative session. Here in Florida, climate change impacts our lives almost every single day. With even hotter temperatures, more deadly natural disasters, flooding, sea level rise, and red tide and blue-green algae, killing plants and animals and affecting our tourism. It is not just stronger threats of storms, but also threatening the lives and of our property. Climate change affects the food we eat, our economy, our jobs, our infrastructure, our public health, our environment, and our way of life here in the state of Florida. This may be the most urgent issue of our time, and it's critical that we come together to act quickly to protect our natural resources for future generations. Doing nothing is no longer an option. We need to take decisive action to protect our environment and to save the state that we all love so much. That's why my office has made it a top priority to take action to reduce the impacts of climate change and to protect our environment. And what is more important to protecting our environment and our economy and our way of life than clean water? I came into office with a commitment to further clean water efforts in our state. And in August, we rolled out our initiative that we have been working on at the Department of Agriculture for the past 2.5 years. We are rewriting the rules when it comes to agriculture water policy in the state, taking landmark action to increase accountability, transparency, and coordination. When I came into office in 2019, Florida's agriculture's best management practices, otherwise known as BMPs, had not been updated for over a decade. I think we all can agree that a lot has changed in the last year and a half, let alone the last 10 years. And our policies should reflect the times, utilizing the latest research, data, technologies available. As part of our Clean Water Initiative, the Office of Agriculture Water Policy is revamping and reinventing its programs to ensure high levels of effectiveness. This includes common sense changes like prioritizing high-value projects with our cost share program to get the greatest bang for our bucks as our farmers, who are the best stewards of our land, continue to employ most efficient nutrient and water usage practices. We are also focusing on supporting multifaceted practices such as cover crops and no-till drills that provide significant climate mitigation and carbon sequestration benefits. With our Clean Water Initiative, for the first time ever, rather than relying on voluntary self-reporting when it comes to compliance, the Florida Department of Agriculture is conducting in-person site visits in cooperation with our agriculture stakeholders. For the first time ever, we are taking action against those refusing to comply with state law to ensure that the best management practices are being properly implemented. For the first time ever, we are working with producers on corrective action plans and refer cases of non-compliance to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection for enforcement. And for the first time ever, the department is inspecting, collecting, and aggregating detailed records of nutrients being applied by agriculture producers on the production landscape. This increases accountability, transparency, and provides the data necessary to inform decisions based on strong science. Through our Clean Water Initiative, we are increasing the transparency of the state's agriculture water programs while also increasing coordination with the public, stakeholders, the agriculture industry, and our agency partners. This is being done through enhanced education and training outreach, with our department providing online and in-person resources to make our agriculture water programs more accessible. Because to truly impact change, we know that it takes collaboration among all of our stakeholders, from individuals to our research partners like UF-IFAS, to local governments, coordinating agencies, and state legislators. From starting at zero when I came into office to where we are now is how we continue to move forward with our Office of Ag Water Policy's Clean Water Initiative. We've come a long way to make these landmark changes, and I want to thank my team for working on this in the past 2.5 years to get us to the point to where we are today. We all know that our work is not done, but I am so proud to have our department stand up and take concrete action to promote clean water in our state when no other departments have done. We are excited to see the legislation put forward by Senator Farmer and Representative Rayner that will help us build on and strengthen the progress that we've made so far. The other bill that we are discussing here today and legislation put forward by Representative Kelly Skidmore and Senator Tina Polsky is one of the boldest climate plans our state has seen, taking serious steps to mitigate the impacts of climate change here in Florida. If signed into law, the bill will set ambitious statewide greenhouse gas reduction targets, 50% by 2030, 90% by 2050, and 100% by 2055. It will create a requirement for buildings that receive state funds to report their greenhouse gas emissions and energy efficiency. The bill will also create tax credits for farms that produce renewable energy and financial assistance for producers who choose to implement recommended conservation programs. It will implement energy efficiency upgrades in low-income communities across our state because we know the effects of climate change disproportionately affects Americans below the poverty line. Another crucial aspect of this bill is creating new standards for solar panel installations and consumer protections. It would allow for a method called floating solar, in which solar panels can be installed in retention pond systems. These provisions, while helping our environment, will also create new jobs in energy efficiency, relating fields like insulation, roofing, heating, air conditioning, and ventilation. Furthermore, the bill will also create efficiency benchmarking for state-owned buildings using Energy Star system, which will help compare energy performance to similar buildings across the country. Many companies in the private sector are already making great strides in this department, but state leaders can and should lead in setting the standard for energy efficiency. Additionally, the bill includes provisions to better prepare for disasters by studying backup generator power at emergency shelters. This change would give us a better understanding of the resources at these shelters to help better plan and prepare on the front end of a disaster, especially as climate change is causing dangerous storms become stronger and, unfortunately, more frequent. I know both of these pieces of legislation may seem ambitious, but the cost of inaction when it comes to protecting our environment is much greater. And I hope the legislature agrees and moves forward these important bills this session. I'd like to now introduce our legislative leaders on these important environmental and energy initiatives to discuss their bills, starting with Senator Farmer on his water legislation being announced today.
Thank you, Commissioner Fried, and I want to begin by thanking and commending you and your entire department for really recognizing the urgency of the situation. We have an obligation to our future generations to try to preserve that which we have and to at least slow the impacts that we have seen over the last several decades. And what are we talking about here? These BMPs, these best management practices. These are practical measures that producers can take that reduce the amount of fertilizers, animal waste, and other pollutants that enter our water resources. We have a very unique water system in the state of Florida, the aquifer system. She needs to be treated gently, and we need to be able to recognize some of the practices that may be putting us in danger and incentivize these producers to cooperate and work with us in partnership to preserve these important resources. And so these BMPs are designed to improve water quality while still maintaining agricultural production, which we know is so important to our state and the rest of the country. Under the status quo right now, if a producer fails to enroll in BMP, the department will refer the matter to DEP for enforcement. Now, we've put a lot on DEP's plate these days, and they're, I think, a little bit overwhelmed. And so it has taken them a lot of time to follow up on a lot of these matters. Under our bill, the enforcement authority would be given to the department so they can continue on essentially with this mission they've already begun to incentivize and encourage these best management practices to preserve this water supply issue. And there are cost share programs here that are involved. The department works closely with multiple partners, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Center, our local water management districts, soil and water conservation districts, to provide funding to assist these producers in implementing these best management practices. Passing this legislation will empower the department to enforce these BMPs for our environment, for those producers, and for the state of Florida and its citizens. Science is incontrovertible. It shows that following these enumerated actions will help increase the efficiency in which producers are able to carry out their normal activities while preserving our water quality. Once Florida's producers are enrolled in the program, they often see a reduction in their costs as a byproduct of these BMPs, while they can operate in an environmentally more friendly manner. There is an urgency of now. We have been whistling past this graveyard for far too long. And again, I am very thankful and commend you, Commissioner Fried, for taking this initiative, getting out there, listening to these producers, working with them to come up with these BMPs. And I'm very honored and proud to be carrying this legislation. It is a bold, ambitious piece of legislation, but when you really get down to it, it shouldn't be a partisan piece of legislation. This is good for Florida. It's good for the producers. It's good for our water supply. By preserving our water supply in an environmentally and economically sound way, we encourage further smart development and growth in the state of Florida. This is really a no-brainer that I hope our colleagues will see, will put aside their partisan jerseys and work with us to pass this important piece of legislation. So I'm very honored and privileged to be here, and we will push as hard as we can to get this legislation heard and passed. And so with that, thank you, and I'll give it back to you.
And thank you, Senator Farmer, for your partnership in helping us move our Clean Water Initiative forward with this important bill. And we are calling on the Senate Environmental and Natural Resources Committee to hear SB 904. Now to talk about her energy bill, I'd like to turn it over to Representative Skidmore, who I was honored to join in Palm Beach County along with Senator Polsky to recently announce this legislation, and that we also were very excited to discuss at our recent Florida Energy and Climate Summit that was held a couple weeks ago in Orlando. Representative?
Thank you so much, Commissioner. It's such a joy to work with you and your agency on issues that are important to all of Florida. And these two pieces of legislation combined really are what you call a bold vision. And it's just so refreshing to have this kind of opportunity for us to make real important and critical change. And we've come a long way. We're now allowed to say climate change. So there's a start, but there's so much more to do, and these two pieces of legislation really help move us in the right direction. You've heard a little bit about the energy bill. I'm going to tell you from the district that I represent in Palm Beach County, a very large swath of that is agricultural land. And you are so right, the farmers are the stewards of the land. They have been for centuries, and they continue to be. And they are great partners in this initiative. It's important that we incent them, the producers, to increase renewable and efficient energy practices, and they are willing and anxious to do that with us. This bill would create a tax credit that would encourage farmers to utilize solar panels on their land that's not being currently used for agriculture. It would provide on-site energy and water evaluations for the producers and would allow for financial assistance up to 80% of the cost to implement the recommendations from that evaluation, up to $25,000. The provision is based on a pilot program created by Commissioner Fried and the Department of Agriculture in Suwannee County, and that has had great success. The goal is to further stimulate the development and adoption of energy efficient and renewable energy technologies, as well as conservation practices within agricultural production. It's important, also very important, that we make sure low-income communities, which many surround the lake in District 81 that I represent, and they are at greater risk because of the buildings that they live in, and we have a great program to make sure low-income communities are also able to access energy-efficient updates. The proposed changes would create a program to implement energy efficiency upgrades at existing single-family and multifamily residential properties for low-income households. Many buildings in low-income areas are older, less energy efficient, which also means they are correlated with greater risk for respiratory disease. I know there are many people in my district who would benefit from these provisions. The next part of the bill is also critical. We have to have goals. If you haven't set a plan for where you're going, you're not sure how you're going to get there. These are bold goals. And it's important for state leaders to hold themselves accountable for the emissions and energy efficiency that this bill provides. This bill would create staggered greenhouse gas reporting deadlines for entities that receive state funding. A greenhouse gas reporting system will provide an accurate, transparent, and verified set of greenhouse gas emission data from reporting entities, supported by a robust accounting and verification infrastructure. Commissioner Fried told you the staggered dates from 2023 to 2025. State government, local government, universities, colleges, electric utilities, natural gas utilities, and large businesses. This is crucial because these buildings are the largest greenhouse gas emitters in the state. The bill would also create efficiency benchmarking for state-owned buildings using the Energy Star system, which will help compare energy performance to similar buildings across the country. Many companies in the private sector are already doing this and making great strides, so we know that it works. This bill also includes the provisions to better prepare for disasters by studying backup generator power at emergency shelters, which Commissioner Fried talked about. And this change would give us a better understanding of the resources at the shelters to help us better plan, prepare on the front end of a disaster, especially as climate change is causing stronger and more frequent dangerous storms. This, too, is important. We need to take action immediately to address climate change here in Florida, and I'm happy that I am allowed to say climate change. So thank you, Commissioner Fried. I said when we were in Palm Beach County that you are the visionary that the state of Florida needs, and I am so proud to work with you on these really important initiatives, and thank you for allowing me to do so.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you for your leadership as well and our partnership in these very important bills. And to both of you, along with, again, Senator Polsky and Representative Rayner, thank you again for working with our office on these bills. Florida is so lucky to have leaders such as you all fighting this fight with us. A healthy environment is central to every aspect of our lives, and passing these bills is an important next step to fighting to protect our future, our natural resources, and making sure that Florida is safe for the next generations to come. Now I will open up for some questions.
Can you sort of discuss a little bit about what authority you would take from DEP under this legislation?
On which one?
Is both bills transfer authority?
No, just as far as, because what happens now, there's a disconnect to kind of go through how the program works for the BMPs. Is that we work in conjunction with Department of Environmental Protection as well as our research entities, whether it's IFAS or others research, to create the BMP manuals. Those are the ones that have not been updated, some of them longer than a decade. So once and everybody signs on and checks them, then it is the job of the Department of Agriculture to enroll our agriculture entities into these programs. And then what we historically have done is the self-reporting. At the end of the year, they give us information about how much they have actually been utilizing the fertilizers and other types of products, waters, and that's when it had stopped, before my administration. And if we have found that, in fact, somebody has violated and is going against the BMP program, what should have happened is then taking those producers and sending them over to the Department of Environmental Protection for enforcement. Unfortunately, prior to my administration, no companies and producers were ever sent over to DEP. We have also since reported that 6,600 under my administration has now been doing so. What this would do, instead of sending it over to DEP, we in-house it. And so that way we are the checks and balances inside, because there is a disconnect. As Senator Farmer has said, DEP has a tremendously large responsibility on so many different facets. This is such a small carve-out for them that this gives us an opportunity to work with our producers to not only get them enrolled in the BMP programs, but work with them on corrective measures and getting them into compliance. So we would be taking that piece of enforcement and bringing it back over to the Department of Agriculture, so the program is all housed inside of FDACS.
To be clear, there were 6,600 entities that had violated the agreement that had not been had any enforcement action.
So prior to my administration, there had never been a time when a producer was sent over to DEP for enforcement. Now we've come in and been able to hold people accountable, which is what this whole program is supposed to be, is accountability, transparency, and making sure that we're doing right. And so in fact, when we have seen that these producers who have signed basically a contract to be part of the program have violated the program, then we've sent them over to DEP for enforcement.
And then, as far as you know, there's been 6,600 folks or entities that have been sent over. And then, do you have any idea how many of those have been investigated or found in violation by DEP?
So the last time that I spoke to the interim secretary, we had went through those 6,600, and letters had been sent to them. From my understanding, there was about 1,500 that had not responded. And so we were following up with them, okay, where are we on those 1,500? And they're going through and figuring out what to do with the rest. But again, they're overwhelmed, and I have not received a timeline or actual information about any corrective actions that have been taken.
Representative Skidmore, if I may. The provisions in your bill that have to do with the staggered greenhouse gas reduction goals, if I heard you correctly, apply to entities that receive state funding. Right?
Yes.
I'm asking you where the most likely resistance would come from to this idea?
I don't really know where the resistance would come from. I think for most people, it's going to be an economic decision. And so for those who it's going to be more challenging for, that's where it would probably be more difficult for them. And they may not want to move forward with that. But the reality is that we need to start now, and we need to do it now. And we need to set the example by folks who are receiving state funding. We need to hold them accountable for what we need as a state moving forward.
Well, the flip side of my question is what if you could get, and maybe you are getting, state colleges to be on board, the state university system, and on and on and on. Those players.
So they're part of the staggered dates. All governments, universities, and colleges by January 2024. January 1, 2024. They would be part of the greenhouse gas reporting system.
And I think that the philosophy behind this is, how can we ask the people to do this at home and not ask our government entities to do it too? And that includes this building itself.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably one of those buildings that we have a lot of work on to make sure that it is energy efficient. But how can we put the onus onto the consumer and to the individual when government itself is not doing it?
And I know, and I'm sorry, they all have 1 o'clock engagement, so I don't want to keep it moving, but digital careers,